Let's be direct.
The authority you think you have as a manager, it's already shrinking.
And this isn't happening with some big announcement. It's happening quietly, structurally, and no one asked for your permission. Power is simply no longer flowing through you. You might still have the title, you still show up to the meetings, you still feel like you're in charge, but underneath it all, the very system you operate in has already changed.
So, to really get a handle on this tectonic shift, we're going to break it down. We'll start with the anatomy of authority itself, then look at how AI is breaking that old dependency engine. We'll talk about the symptoms of irrelevance, what you should be looking for, and map out the essential pivot from control to influence. And finally, we'll pinpoint where the new center of power actually lies for human leaders.
All right, let's start at the very beginning. You see, managerial authority was never just about a job title. It wasn't some abstract concept. It was real, it was tangible, and it was built on the very architecture of how information moved through a company. It was structural. And that structure really stood on 4 key pillars. First, and this is crucial, information reached you first. All that important data, the directives from leadership, they landed on your desk before anyone else's. Second, you were the filter. You decided what got passed down, how it was framed, what got prioritized. Which of course meant, and this is the third pillar, your teams were completely dependent on your interpretation of those goals. And finally, you were the approval gate. Nothing of substance happened without your say-so. This wasn't just managing, it was being a powerful and necessary node in the information chain.
But when you look at that flow, you really have to ask yourself, was this model ever truly about leadership? Or was it just about being a necessary bottleneck? The whole system was designed to make you a required step in the process. But was that actually adding value, or was it just adding process? And that right there is the key. For the vast majority of managers, their power was never really personal. It wasn't about some unique charisma or brilliant expertise. It was a direct result of the system's design. The organization literally created a structural dependency on you. Your relevance was hardwired right into the workflow.
Okay, but that engine, that dependency engine we just talked about, it's breaking down, and the agent of change here is AI. Now, we need to be really precise about this. AI didn't show up to take the manager's job. It showed up to remove the structural dependency that made that old kind of authority possible. And that distinction is absolutely critical. The AI is removing the dependency, but it isn't removing the manager. So what on earth does that mean in the real world? If you still have the title on your business card, but the actual reliance on you for information and approval is just gone, what's left? What are you supposed to be doing all that?
Well, it means the entire playing field has changed. In this new reality, the data that used to flow exclusively to you is now directly accessible to your entire team. The insights that you would spend hours, maybe days trying to distill, they're now generated instantly by an algorithm. Recommendations are no longer coming from your gut feeling, they're system-driven. And because of all that, the old layers of escalation, they're just becoming obsolete.
What's happening is that a new path for information and action has literally been drawn inside the organization. You can think of it like this. There was an old country road that everyone had to use, and you were the toll booth operator. Now, a superhighway has been built right next to it. Data flows in, AI processes it, and the insights go straight to the team who can then act on it. Your checkpoint, your little toll booth, has been completely bypassed.
And that really is the starkest way to put it. Understanding no longer requires hierarchy. When literally anyone on your team can ask the system a deeply complex question and get a coherent, data-backed answer in seconds, the need to go through you for that same understanding, it just evaporates.
So what does this actually feel like when you're in the thick of it? The shift in power isn't some sudden, dramatic event. There's no memo, there's no meeting where your authority gets officially revoked. No, it's a creeping, silent change. And that's what makes it so dangerous. It's incredibly easy to miss until it's way too late. It just shows up as a series of subtle symptoms. So these are the warning signs you have to watch for. First, you notice you're being consulted less on the big stuff. Then you find out the decisions are happening around you, not through you. You hear about them after the fact. In meetings, you'll see your professional opinion get pitted against a data point from the system, and the data wins, almost every single time. And finally, you look at your calendar one day and you realize your job has become less about strategy and more about just coordination. You're just managing logistics.
When you put it all together, what you're really looking at is a kind of silent demotion.
You go from being required, the person the process can't function without, to just being included. Kept in the loop, maybe out of courtesy. You shift from actively driving outcomes to merely supporting execution. Your name's still on the org chart, but your actual function, it's been quietly downgraded. But here's the most dangerous part of this whole thing. The day-to-day routine of work can completely mask this loss of relevance. The meetings are still on the calendar. The emails are still flooding your inbox. On the surface, everything feels totally normal. You can be incredibly busy, putting in 50-hour weeks, all while being progressively, systematically bypassed. So if that old foundation of structural power is crumbling, what's the move? What's the path forward? Well, it demands a very deliberate, very strategic pivot. You have to consciously shift your focus away from structural control, which is being automated away, to a position of earned influence, which can't be. Because if you keep trying to rely on your old approval authority, you won't get fired, you'll just get ignored. And this is what that pivot really looks like in practice. It's about moving from controlling execution to defining direction, setting the why and the where, not just managing the how. You have to shift from just managing people to actively shaping decisions, using your experience and your wisdom to guide the choices that the AI and your team are bringing to the table. And maybe most importantly, you have to evolve from being a gate that just slows things down to being a genuine value creator, someone who adds something to the process that the system simply can't. Which brings us to the most critical question of all. Where is this new power center? The only way to thrive in this new world is to stop competing with AI on its home turf, calculation, speed, data processing, and instead master the areas where it is fundamentally and perhaps permanently limited. And look, these limitations, they aren't just temporary bugs that are going to get patched in the next update. And AI really struggles to handle true ambiguity, all the messy, contradictory realities of doing business. It can't fully balance human context, the political landscape in the office, team morale, a customer's emotions. And most critically, an AI cannot define strategic intent. It can't tell you which hill is actually worth dying on. These aren't flaws in the system, they're opportunities for human leadership. So really, the ultimatum here is pretty clear. And this isn't some far-off prediction. This is happening in organizations right now. If you understand this shift early on and you start making that pivot we talked about, you will evolve. You'll become a new, far more valuable kind of leader. But if you don't, if you just cling to those old levers of control, the system will simply evolve without you. Which leaves us with one final, very provocative question to think about. AI is getting brilliant at optimizing decisions. There's no question about that. But who in your organization is going to define what's worth deciding in the first place? That is the new frontier of value, and that's where real human leadership is going to matter more than ever. If you found this discussion valuable, make sure to subscribe for our next one.